should have been one of the happiest moments of their lives together. Just 73 days after this video was recorded, Cedric would walk into his wife's elementary school classroom, and both of them in the most gruesome ways possible. Before I take you into that classroom on April 10th, 2017, where everything would come crashing down in the most devastating way possible, let me rewind to late January of that same year, when honeymoon phase, both literal and metaphorical, was about to give way to something sinister that Karen and Smith never saw. There was no one who would be less observant.
I have surprised myself with what I could make with a simple tool, but it kept me to work. And my need today was a new paint to heat the oven and stove with. My oven is now starting to show a bit of rust. I have made all kinds of things from making new paint. It seems that I always have a good stockpile of them in the woodshed. Bush plants have discarded many over the years. And like they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I don't think a man knows what he actually can do until he's checked. I do think a man has missed a very deep feeling of satisfaction if he has never created something, or at least completed something with his own two hands. We have grown accustomed to work on pieces and parts of things, instead of taking things to completion. The emphasis seems to be on teamwork. Now, I realize that man working together can't perform miracles. Such as sending a man to work on the surface of the moon. And there's definitely a need and place for teamwork. I would be the last to argue that point. We need each other. But nevertheless, in a jam, the best friend you have is yourself. It is always a pleasure to see what you can make, instead of buying it all packaged up and ready made.
I don't know if you know this, man, but immigrant parents, they can't give a compliment to one child without assaulting another. It's a physical impossibility. I found this out because my brother just graduated from college. And when we got back home, my dad was like, Richard, your breasts. Thank you. I need white women, black girls. They talk about me. Down to what? My son, my one and only son. I said, Mom, you ain't seen me? I said, okay, first of all, as you can tell, I am Haitian American. Yeah, yeah, I'm Haitian American. Jackson dogs is straight from Ohio. Definitely not straight from Ohio. Yes, I knew it was a lot. As soon as I seen that news, I knew it was a lot. Christmas. That is that immigrants don't and Springfield, Ohio is the whitest place I've ever heard in my life. You know how they say black people originate from Africa? White people originate from Springfield, Ohio. Yes, I was on there. That's the problem today, man. I think we have way too many conspiracy theories for everything. Even the Diddy news. Remember the Diddy news thing? I had a friend come up to me. You know why they arrested Diddy? They arrested Diddy. How you think this man did nuclear codes at the free office? Man, we never do that for regular people. You never be at work like, hey, man, I heard you got fired. What happened? You got fired because you too much.
Okay.
There's a cult in Tennessee that preaches weight loss as a path to God. The founder, Gwen Shamblin, suspiciously died in a plane crash. But somehow, the remnant fellowship church is still alive and thriving. So what's really going on here behind closed doors? And what will happen if I try to sneak in to convince the cult that I'm right? There's one way to find out. This is Michael Black, the founder of Summit, on a mission to expose the cause of crime, body shaming, and financial control to even more severe forms of manipulation.
This is where the blackness of this room is scary. It's a type of thing that sucks in. So why black? What is it about black that you're like, I see the wind change. Somebody that's narcissistic. I'm getting abused for belief in ice or, feeling this person, this persona.
À Kinshasa, ont assisté à des scènes de la vie ordinaire d'un changement de régime, scènes de pillage notamment, dans les résidences de la famille. À cet endroit, sur les hauteurs de Kinshasa, nulle trace encore des soldats de l'Alliance, de Laurent Désiré Kabila. Ailleurs, ils sont intraitables pour réprimer les pillages. Ici, ils semblent laisser faire, car ces maisons convictes sont les symboles du régime exécutoire après 32 ans de dictature.
The agenda's nightmare of fierce tribal conflicts has brought upon the tribute. People dying in fighting or murder later. Then, the gambling tax was taking millions in currency from the city's central bank before fleeing the country. Legacy that will be long remembered. Space will appear on banknotes for years to come. The capital is quiet, but the Egypt victory, after hours of heavy fighting around the military and civilian centers of the capital, still disillusioned and sacked the city. Not a single shot escaped 3 days of looting. Shelves were stripped bare, and businesses run by authority supporters crossed the torch. The evil colonial discipline army has ceased, but in the early days of a new regime, no one short of fighting peace. Thus, the dawn curfew enters the streets, very few dare break it. The army is in supreme control of the capital, and a much more relaxed atmosphere has returned. Heavy armaments and unmanned military headquarters, people are moving effectively, and we found no hostility from the Italian troops. In fact, it's been quite the reverse. As military council headquarters, they're still trying to bring divided factions into the interim government. The man who spearheaded the coup, Brigadier Auxilio Fratello, and his chief of staff returned, pledging a new start to the country.
One unity, one love.
The military council wants a birthday return, from wherever he may be. The new head of state is General Tito Echanger. After attending mass, he is a devout Roman Catholic. The general welcomed us to Kampala, saying that we can see for ourselves that the civilization is different. The general himself goes heavily on guard and never leaves his side. The new leaders have promised to establish peace for and return to democracy. It's all been said before, but there is renewed hope that the curse that began in this brutal past may yet be lifted. Red Side ITN, Kampala.
My mom was a crook. She used to do a bunch of shit for scams. My mom put a house fire that killed my sister in 1996. You can Google it. Her name was Rachel Green, 4633 East Terrace Street in Fresno, California. And so my cousin got me laying my head in my
Hold on, you said your cousin's baby dad.
I didn't even know her baby daddy until like years later. When I was 16. My mom was a crook. She used to do a bunch of shit. My mom was a crook.
Man in the hour.
So nice.
Man in the hour.
So nice.
Over there. Gotta be off this kid in Indiana. Favorite. I get the question, I think. And you're the one that bought it, right? Back then?
Percussive maintenance, I think that's something that I can do. And yeah, sometimes finally,
We have this perfect marriage, family life, and I'm the two groups together. I get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning.
All right, y'all, I'm gonna give my children their Christmas money. Johnny, I'm gonna trust Johnny. I'm like, chill, dude. Chill, gave me. So I'm like, take us to the store. Okay. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, okay. 21 years. That is probably one of the most horrific scenes I've ever seen. Walking into that back room of that house.
What happened to him? He picked himself.
This is Jasmine Allen, a 35-year-old woman from Birmingham, Alabama, who just hours after laying her cousin to rest would allegedly open fire on her own family members at backyard barbecue, killing her uncle and her great-uncle while shooting her own sister. Before we get to that night of December 6, 2025, we need to understand what brought this family together in the first place. 6 days earlier, on November 30th, the Brown Allen family experienced what would become the first tragedy in a chain of interconnected violence. Around 1:17 in the morning, deputies in Fairfield, Alabama, responded to a person down call at 5051 Parkway Alley. What they found there would set everything else in motion. 29-year-old Ja'Ori Markel Brown Allen was lying on the ground, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds following what police described as a verbal dispute with a relative. The argument, whatever it was about, had escalated to the point where someone pulled the trigger multiple times. By 1:43 in the morning, just 26 minutes after the first call came in, Ja'Ori was pronounced dead at the scene by Fairfield Fire Rescue. The relative in question was a 27-year-old Alicia Brown. Less than 12 hours later, at 11:18 in the morning on December 1st, Alicia was arrested and booked into the Jefferson County Jail on murder charges. She was held without bond, a decision made under Aniah's law, Alabama's statute that allows judges to deny bail for violent offenses. The evidence is strong enough. The investigation was still preliminary, but authorities cited the family dispute as the catalyst for what had happened in those early encounters. Ja'Ori's death marked Jefferson County's 110th homicide of 2025, a grim statistic for a county already reeling from violence. For the Brown Allen family, this wasn't just a number. The funeral took place on December 6th, 6 days after Ja'Ori's death. Family members gathered from all over, traveling to Birmingham to pay their respects and support one another through this unimaginable loss. Among those who made the journey was Sonny Dwayne Arrington, a 43-year-old husband and father of 7 children, 2 girls and 5 boys, who traveled from his home in Clarksville, Tennessee. Sonny was Jocelyn Allen's uncle, a beloved family member who, despite the circumstances, wanted to be there to honor his nephew and provide comfort to his relatives. The funeral itself was what you'd expect from a family trying to hold themselves together in the face of tragedy. Photos from the service, later shared on social media, showed family members dressed in black and red,
What he knew at the time was that this gathering, meant to bring closure and healing, was about to become the setting for something even more horrific. After the funeral service concluded, the family did what many families do after laying a loved one to rest. They gathered for a repast, a meal shared in community, a chance to be together and remember good times. But this particular gathering would take place at a relative's home in the 1500 block of 20th Place in Ensley, a neighborhood in Birmingham's western section. And as the evening wore on and turned to night, something began to shift. But somewhere around 11:25 in the evening, something went terribly wrong. A domestic argument erupted, the kind of heated disagreement that families sometimes have when emotions are already running high. Grief has a way of bringing out the worst in people, of taking small disagreements and turning them into something explosive. And on this night, the family still feeling from burying Jaori just hours earlier, whatever tensions had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. What happened next would mark Birmingham's 78th and 79th homicides of 2025. According to Birmingham police, Jocelyn Allen, 35-year-old niece of Sonny Arrington, the great niece of Carlton Allen, allegedly opened fire on her own family members. But here's where the story gets even more disturbing. Jocelyn didn't fire from inside the apartment where the gathering was taking place. She fired from the outside. Multiple witnesses reported that she shot into the apartment, sending a barrage of bullets through walls and windows, creating chaos and terror for everyone inside. The police would later document double-digit rounds fired at the scene, meaning at least 10 bullets, possibly more, were unleashed in those few moments.
That's good.
In those few moments of rage, the fireman finally stopped and the smoke cleared. The horror of what had happened became devastating to hear. Sonny Arrington, the father of 7, traveled hundreds of miles to be there for his family, was dead. Carlton Rufus Allen, the 76-year-old patriarch, was dead. And Jasmine's own sister was lying wounded, suffering from injuries that would require medical treatment, but thankfully weren't life-threatening.
Talked to someone close to this family who tells me Jackson Allen is accused of killing her uncle and her great uncle. And they say the third victim that she is accused of shooting is Allen's sister. And the person I spoke to tells me that the family was hanging out at a relative's home on the night of Saturday night on 20th Place with Ensley after they attended a funeral. Now that funeral was for a loved one who was shot and killed last week in Fairfield. Officers say there was some type of disagreement before 35-year-old Jasmine Allen opened fire shooting into the apartment. Sadly, we know that she killed 76-year-old Carlton Allen and 43-year-old Sonny Arrington. Now, I'm told that Arrington was a father of 7, and like you all mentioned, he was here visiting from Tennessee to attend that funeral. Now, you know that Jasmine Allen is currently being held in the Jefferson County Jail with no bond. Now, they found her, she was arrested in Vesper, and again, she's being held tonight with no bond. I'm here for the last night.
Carlton was dead at the scene. Their lives ending in the same place where they gathered to honor another family member whose life had been cut short. Cruel chaos inside that apartment in 20th Place and Ensley was something absolute. Neighbors in the terrace area heard the gunfire that night, heard the screams that followed. When police arrived at the scene, they found evidence markers scattered across the property, marking the locations where bullets had struck or where shell casings had fallen. While investigators were processing the crime scene, documenting the evidence, and trying to piece together exactly what had happened, Jasmine Allen was nowhere to be found. After allegedly firing shots into the apartment where her uncle, her great uncle, and her sister were gathered, she fled. But in today's world, with tips coming in from witnesses and modern police techniques, it's hard to stay hidden for long. Within approximately 2 hours of the shooting, Birmingham Police Department's Special Enforcement
That's the only extra on my.
Hold that pussy. Like, Jesus, Lord, you gonna get a little one down here? Ain't nobody fucking there. Stop holding that pussy. That's right.
That's crazy. I never thought I would be where I get done. Right. Because like anybody else, I'm scared. It's
I'll make some surprises. I took my shit. I took my shit. I took down my ass in the name of Jesus. And I said, and still to this day, this nigga don't know that I'm taking him right here. I cheated him. Oh, man, this is all Sean was hanging out with me and you know, like,
The main reason you can't let anybody just use your phone. Imagine your parents come to your house and like, hey, let me use your phone, go somewhere. You're like, I know where you're gonna go. They say the store. When they get to the store, they decide to steal from the store. Then they decide to go back into the store that they were stealing from and proceed to find some stuff to act like, oh, I gotta buy some shit.
Which is paycheck and your knee health is getting worse. If you are over 30 years old, but if you're not 30 yet, you're place your feet together like this, point your toes out like this, do a calf raise, and then squat down like this, and come back up, and there's no pain. You're fine. You just failed that. Uh-oh.
Jamie was a great baby. He's been the greatest kid ever. Saying enough good things about him.
He was always very happy and joyful, enjoyed everything that he did, had a great attention span for learning things, and he was really good. Everybody in my family loves to swim, we all love the water, so we had a swimming pool. Jamie would never go down past the stairs of the pool, and even if I would pick him up and take him out into the water, he would panic. Practically choke you, begging you to be. He was terrified of the deep end of the pool. When Jamie was about 3 or 4, he was young because he was trying to learn to ride a small bike. I was outside with him trying to encourage him to ride the bike, and he started talking about seeing our mom riding a bike down the same street. And he said, Mom rode her blue bike. I saw her ride her blue bike. And I said, where did you see her? Was it a picture? A photograph? And he said, no, I looked down and saw her through the window. I did have a little blue 3-wheeler that I used to ride, and that would have been, for me, around the age of 5. And he knew about it. I'd never mentioned it to him before. I don't even think I have a picture of it. And he said that he used to watch me. And I said, how did you watch me? And then he was kind of indignant about it. It's really when Jamie was around 4 or 5 years old, he started having night terrors. He would be asleep, he'd go to bed, and you'd hear him, thrashing around a little bit, and then all of a sudden he'd come running. He didn't look at you, he didn't look at his surroundings, but he always seemed panicked, like he was looking to get out. Jamie was around 4 years old, and we had gone out one day to take a babysitter. And when we came home, we found out that Jamie had watched the last half of the Titanic movie. And the next day, he started drawing and painting picture after picture of the Titanic. In the first 2 weeks, he probably had painted 50 pictures. One he had over 100 windows drawn in, one pencil drawing, he has all the levels of the ship. Like you cut the ship in half, and you can see all the different rooms and everything. He knew the ship. He knew it by heart. You can't learn that by watching the movie. The movie actually was more of a love story, and Jamie was completely distraught over the fact that the people in the film room died first. Like it was his fault
that they were trapped.
I figured he'd seen the movie, which was a popular movie at the time, and maybe that's why he was into it. But the form of obsession that he had with it, I knew wasn't normal. So I was a little freaked out.
He started talking about the accident itself and how it shouldn't have happened. That there were mistakes, the recorder's cut, and the men in the boiler room should not have been trapped. And he would cry about it.
He had so much knowledge about the ship and such an interest in it that we thought there has to be some other deeper connection.
When he was 5 years old, he was telling me some of the mistakes that they made in building the ship using iron instead of steel was wrong. He was 5. He was telling me these things. I'd always grew up with the belief of reincarnation. So it was a very common thing for me to think that, yes, there might be more than just this one life. So after Jamie was having memories of the Titanic for almost 2 years, as we studied the Titanic and the history of it, we finally come to the conclusion of who he was. We didn't match him up with anybody right away, but as we studied the Titanic and the history of it, Jamie could have been one of the designers. His name was Thomas Andrews.
I felt like Jamie had a connection with the ship's architect, Thomas Andrews, and he was very interested in the ship building side.
Thomas Andrews designed several ships for the White Star Line, and it was his habit of going on all the maiden voyages of the ships that he helped design and build. And on the Titanic, the night that they were sinking, he chose not to get on a lifeboat and went down with the ship. Andrews was the chief designer. He was the one that was fighting with J.P. Morgan, who financed the Titanic. He fought with him over the fact that they didn't have enough lifeboats. The fact that they were trying to get the show done by a certain date, so they weren't constructing it as carefully as they could have been. Thomas Andrews wanted to use steel, and they used iron, and then, of course, once the iron, which wasn't as strong as steel, got in the sub-zero temperatures of the water, it became brittle. So that was another reason why the ship literally broke apart. When you read about Thomas Andrews, it fit with what Jamie said. They took the Titanic exhibit across the country, and as soon as my daughter Teal heard that they were coming to Chicago, we bought tickets immediately and figured Jamie has to go see it.
The things that he was experiencing were becoming more and more intense, and the obsession had been going on for so long that I thought maybe if he is exposed to things that were actually there, something will click in him and it won't be such an obsession anymore. Maybe if he gets closer to it, it'll make things better.
When we went to the Titanic exhibit in Chicago, I was hoping that there would be something that would turn the corner for Jamie. But it was after the exhibit that Jamie had the dream that I call the death dream. He had been suffering from night terrors for a couple of years. One night, this was after we had seen the exhibit, I was home alone with Jamie. He was in bed asleep, and I was watching television, and all of a sudden I heard a bang on his bedroom wall. It was rhythmic. It was bang, 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 bang. And I jumped up, and I ran down the hallway, and I flung the door open, and Jamie was up on all fours on his bed. He was staring at the floor, and he was almost convulsing. He was shaking so hard. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was terrified, and I didn't know if I should shake him out of it. And before I could even do anything, he screamed, and I cannot tell you the terror in his voice. He screamed, "She's going down."
it didn't sound like a little boy. It sounded like a man. I started to cry. But after that night, it was a day or two, we would talk about the Titanic. And then it was a week, we talked about the Titanic. Then it was 2 weeks. It slowly, we just stopped talking about it. And I really felt that through all of that brought him to the memory of actually the ship sinking. And once he experienced that, it was over. It was over.
My name is Jamie, and I'm 19 years old. I would like to think that I was probably Thomas Sanders just because of the personality traits, and what he did is what I would have done. He gave himself up to let others get off the ship. And this was a horrible tragedy in history. I don't know, I'm just very at peace with it, knowing that I died on the Titanic. Titanic will always be in connection with me some way, and it's always going to be a part of me, but it's just moving this over. I no longer feel like it's
Jamie was a great baby. He's been the greatest kid ever. And good things about him.
Do you think people who are affected on me, I don't know, and what perspective given is how did you
You're here, you have the authority, I'm directing you brutally, your wife. I'm told that about you. Okay, you hear me out. I heard an offer is narcissist. You're a narcissist. And this is the book. Well, Brooklyn. So really, I'm only trying to say, this started by Brooklyn, feels amazing. Or, maybe wasn't that. Or, this was daddy. All my kids dads like that. We got blind ass dogs. All these types of bitches out there. This is why it's away from their head. Or, alcoholic free. These hoes got good pussy. The only one that knows going on. Or, you ain't had no big pussy. A couple bitches. You think that everything can become that. Anything.
it's something like crazy?
It's important. That makes you.
Holly and David always suspected that there was just something off about her family. Years later, she would find out she was pregnant. In 1970, when she was 5 years old, her parents, Ruth and Warren, separated. And to Pauline, it wasn't that much of a shock because her father, Warren, was a heavy drinker and extremely violent. But after they separated, and Pauline, her mother, and brother moved into another house on the other side of the
My dad is John Daniel Kingston. My dad has 14 wives, counting my mom, and I have 13 siblings on my mom's side and 157 siblings on my dad's side. Married brothers, married sisters, mothers. That's pretty weird. In 2013, when my mom got really sick, my friend convinced her to try some type of treatment that he thought could work instead of going to like the hospital and stuff. When she actually did pass away, then my dad, later just took an inventory of all their stuff and said, if you want, you can buy it. Otherwise, we're just going to sell it on carousel. My dad said the next day, you need to pack your bags. Figure out where you're going to live.
People live in cult, they have it in the world because everything that's been put into them is Martin said, do you remember the man who acted really nice, but he was mean? It's no secret. Almost every jail call is recorded. No one should know that better than a law enforcement officer. But in 2022, then Richmond County Deputy Diana Santiago was recorded at least 27 times talking to an inmate at the Greene County Jail, putting your safety and the safety of her fellow deputies at risk. We'll get to that inmate in just a minute, but first, let's talk about those calls. In about half of them, Deputy Santiago is in uniform. And yes, she's actually driving her patrol car in this video call. In some calls, she appears to be on duty.
Who? He was flying to right here.
At one point, she shows him where she is working. And another time, brings up a gang by name.
Wait a minute.
Again, this was 2022. Fast forward to 2025 and Santiago's arrest in October. Documents show her connection to that same gang. According to her recent arrest warrant, she admitted to an intimate relationship with a member of LOE. It also says she admitted to visiting that member while she was on duty and using the Richmond County Sheriff's Office databases to look up information for him. That suspect is not the same person in these videos. This inmate is Raheem Brown. At the time, was facing felony drug charges in Greene County, but that's not all. Brown was arrested when he was out on bond on murder and armed robbery charges for a shooting that killed a man in 2021 at the Budget Hotel on 5th Street in Augusta. Brown is also a convicted felon. According to Santiago's disciplinary file, it was well known around the jail Brown was in a relationship with a deputy, which isn't surprising considering these video calls are out in the open. You can even see her in uniform waving to another inmate. She's also listed as Raheem Brown's wife on his visitation information. Someone reported all of this to Internal Affairs at the Richmond County Sheriff's Office in 2022. Santiago didn't deny it. She said she met Brown at the Augusta Mall about 5 or 6 months earlier, when he was out on bond. The relationship violated policy, but she agreed to end it, so she was suspended for just 1 day. She was ordered to have no contact with the inmate, but was allowed to have a closure breakup call. By then, the damage could have already been done. She had already told a convicted felon in jail on drug charges about an operation to find fentanyl. And she was busted not having her body clean on. Which certainly makes you wonder why in 2022, all then Sheriff Richard Roundtree gave Deputy Santiago was a slap on the wrist. Allowing her to essentially fly under the radar until this year, when she found herself on the other side of the line. Had Sheriff Roundtree hired Santiago in 2022, it would have triggered a state investigation. Georgia Code certifies all law enforcement officers. That investigation could have prevented her from ever being an officer again in Georgia. Because she was fired this time, Folks is now investigating. I contacted Roundtree to ask him about all of this. He thanked me for reaching out, but called my request extremely unrealistic. Being out of office for almost a year now, how would I expect him to remember specifics of a case without the benefits of reports or talking to him? This is the first time showing this picture. Can we see what she is? This is the first time showing this picture. Can we see what she is?
Hitler is basically a smackhead.
Range of hard drugs.
And you're the type of person that you always depend on. As long as the people around you see him, that's all you care about.
Tamir and Rodney was like total opposite.
Everything about him was a joke. He never really took nothing real serious. Tiger always tried to just play the big brother role too Rodney.
He embraced that street life. Rodney didn't care about
At the end of the day, all that was shattered.
His father was begging for his son. You can't get any more cool from
Summer 2020. And brothers Tamir and Rodney enjoyed a day out with their family, making social media videos at a water park.
I tell the children, they like to get everything together. I never seen something. For the most part, they was the typical brothers.
Tiger always been like, dumb. Like he always been like,
So I knew would make you mad and smile all the time.
Daddy, I call him like aggravated. He just like convinced people. I mean, we would be married and it's always fun.
Tamir Dial Hale is born on January 2000, but his parents separated soon after his birth.
Shortly after the pregnancy, we kind of broke up and we never got back together. We just raised our years together.
Tamir was a happy-go-lucky baby. Like, it was a joy to have him. Everybody in my family loved Tamir.
He was a mama's boy. He was sweet. My favorite child, Rodney, he was born November the 8th of 2003. I don't think it made a difference that they did not have the same father. Because I feel like my kids grew up knowing they had the same mother. Boys fought. My house was always loud. Because I had more boys than girls. They argued, they disagreed, and then they was right back staying together. I feel like they was normal kids and they loved each other, but of course they had disagreements. I heard a good brother. He was a really good brother.
Like he wanted us to do the right thing and stay on the right path to be like our best selves.
My little brother, but he was like a big one. He's always been a protector.
When Tamir is 12 and Rodney is 8, when Tamir is 12 and Rodney is 8, their family gets even bigger when Pinky gives birth to her seventh child, Jeremiah.
When I got pregnant with Jeremiah, I think everybody was upset. I think everybody was like, we don't want no more kids. Tamir and Jeremiah were twins. All of them were really pretty close.
But as Tamir and Rodney become teenagers, their lives start to go in very different directions.
Rodney was always wanted to be tough. Tamir and Rodney was like total opposite. Tamir learned at a young age and hustled to get money. He would shovel snow, cut grass. He never tried to go down the street life for Rodney. He embraced that street life, the street culture. That was he wanted for himself. John Miller always talked to me about how he would talk to Rodney and try to turn his life around. And he got pops, he just didn't listen to him. Nothing he could do.
Like they're always trying to talk to like about doing the right things, but it really wasn't happening. Once he got out of high school, he was determined, and he would tell me every day, "Mom, I'm doing this for you. You want me to have the phone? I'm going to get it."
I was extremely happy when somebody recommended high school.
I didn't really start misbehaving to maybe about fourth, fifth grade. He didn't want to be in school, and he was very disrespectful to teachers. By 12th grade, he just completely dropped out. It was hard raising teenage boys all together, but Rodney was definitely the one that gave me the most problems. As Sam was growing up, when Rodney was at home, he was a normal person. We were all sing together. I think Rodney put on a persona for the street.
It's me, Rodney, and Mom. This is the first time me and Rodney spent a good amount of time together. So we're going to school sometimes. And kids. I love that video. Then you know me around. It was like a little TikTok trend. It was funny. That's another TikTok. Me and Rodney comparing like our features.